brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At the order of President Harry S. Truman during the final stage of World War II, the United States dropped nuclear weapons on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6 and 9, 1945, respectively. The United States had dropped the bombs with the consent of the United Kingdom as outlined in the Quebec Agreement. The two bombings, which killed at least 129,000 people, remain the only use of nuclear weapons for warfare in history. In the final year of the war, the Allies prepared for what was anticipated to be a very costly invasion of the Japanese mainland. This was preceded by a U.S. conventional and firebombing campaign that destroyed 67 Japanese cities. The war in Europe had concluded when Nazi Germany signed its Instrument of Surrender on May 8, 1945. The Japanese, facing the same fate, refused to accept the Allies' demands for unconditional surrender, and the Pacific War continued. The Allies called for the unconditional surrender of the Japanese armed forces in the Potsdam Declaration on July 26, 1945, the alternative being prompt and utter destruction. The Japanese response to this ultimatum was to ignore it. By August 1945, the Allies' Manhattan Project had produced two types of atomic bombs, and the 509th Composite Group of the United States Army Air Forces was equipped with the specialized silver plate version of the Boeing B-29 Superfortress that could deliver them from Tinian in the Mariana Islands. Orders for atomic bombs to be used on 4 Japanese cities were issued on July 25. On August 6, the U.S. dropped a uranium gun-type bomb on Hiroshima, and American President Harry S. Truman called for Japan's surrender, warning it to expect a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth. 3 days later, on August 9, a plutonium implosion-type bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Within the first 2 to 4 months following the bombings, the acute effects of the atomic bombings had killed 9,000,146,000 people in Hiroshima and 3,900,000,800 in Nagasaki. Roughly half of the deaths in each city occurred on the first day. During the following months, large numbers died from the effect of burns, radiation sickness, and other injuries, compounded by illness and malnutrition. In both cities, most of the dead were civilians, although Hiroshima had a sizable military garrison. Japan announced its surrender to the Allies on August 15, 6 days after the bombing of Nagasaki, and the Soviet Union's declaration of war. On September 2, the Japanese government signed the Instrument of Surrender, effectively ending World War II. The justification for the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is still debated to this day. Pacific War. In 1945, the Pacific War between the Empire of Japan and the Allies entered its 4th year. The Japanese fought fiercely, ensuring that U.S. victory would come at an enormous cost. Of the 1.25 million battle casualties incurred by the United States in World War II, including both military personnel killed in action and wounded in action, nearly 1 million occurred in the 12-month period from June 1944 to June 1945. December 1944 saw American battle casualties hit an all-time monthly high of 88,000 as a result of the German Ardennes offensive. In the Pacific, the Allies returned to the Philippines, recaptured Burma, and invaded Borneo. Offensives were undertaken to reduce the Japanese forces remaining in Bougainville, New Guinea and the Philippines. In April 1945, American forces landed on Okinawa, where heavy fighting continued until June. Along the way, the ratio of Japanese to American casualties dropped from 5 to 1 in the Philippines to 2 to 1 on Okinawa. Although some Japanese were taken prisoner, most fought until they were killed or committed suicide. Nearly 99% of the 21,000 defenders of Iwo Jima were killed. Of the 117,000 Japanese troops defending Okinawa in April-June 1945, 94% were killed. American military leaders used these figures to estimate high casualties among American soldiers in the planned invasion of Japan. As the Allies advanced towards Japan, conditions became steadily worse for the Japanese people. Japan's merchant fleet declined from 5,250,000 gross tons in 1941 to 1,560,000 tons in March 1945, and 557,000 tons in August 1945. Lack of raw materials forced the Japanese war economy into a steep decline after the middle of 1944. The civilian economy, which had slowly deteriorated throughout the war, reached disastrous levels by the middle of 1945. The loss of shipping also affected the fishing fleet, and the 1945 catch was only 22% of that in 1941. The 1945 rice harvest was the worst since 1909, and hunger and malnutrition became widespread. U.S. industrial production was overwhelmingly superior to Japan's. By 1943, the U.S. produced almost 100,000 aircraft a year, compared to Japan's production of 70,000 for the entire war. By the middle of 1944, the U.S. had almost 100 aircraft carriers in the Pacific, far more than Japan's 25 for the entire war. In February 1945, Prince Fumimaro Kono advised the Emperor Hirohito that defeat was inevitable, and urged him to abdicate. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.